So, ever since Kullervo was released, everybody and their mom has been fooling around with OVERGUARD. Kullervo's OVERGUARD has been buffed so it scales with strength and all that extra jazz. Rhino has to do 1 million steps to get 4 million iron skin. Frost has to use an augment to hit more than one enemy to get a puny OVERGUARD. And then comes this fool with his new augment. Yeah, that's 1.2 million OVERGUARD, by the way, on STYANAX. What's good, folks? It's Nightmare Frame here with a new Warframe video looking at the new STYANAX Augment and how it completely changed him for the better. So when STYANAX was released, it was quite a hype Warframe. A lot of people loved using him. It was buggy, and then DE nerfed him to a certain extent. So then people just stopped using him. But then after, we realized, hey, we can just slap on a Helminth on him and suddenly he's fixed. That also gutted his survivability. But now with the release of Intrepid Stand, his new augment, you just have to kill enemies with his 4th ability to get OVERGUARD. And this OVERGUARD also applies to your allies. So STYANAX is now a support, a tank, and a DPS. Nice one, DE. I was chilling in a normal survival and steel path, able to hit 200k OVERGUARD. Just like that. For those who don't know what OVERGUARD is, it's another layer of health that goes right on top of your shields. Unfortunately, it is not affected by damage reduction, from adaptation, or even armor. However, it does prevent status effects, and also gives you 0.5 seconds of a OVERGUARD gate. So, what was wrong with STYANAX that made him bad to play? For one, DE changed his 4th ability, so it could not be recasted till he landed, and the damage wasn't as optimal. Also, they changed it so that he could not cast any of his abilities while his 4th ability was active. That made him lose some survivability, as he could not crowd control enemies with his 1st ability. All that was left was Rally Point, his 3rd ability, for survivability. Rally Point aggroes enemies so they can focus on STYANAX. It regenerates shields per kill and gives you energy regen over time. The problem was that his 3rd ability could not keep up with the energy loss whenever you casted his 4th ability. And that's where Nourish came in to save the day. Before anyone jumps to conclusions, no, Nourish does not apply to his 4th ability, but it applies to his 3rd ability. Some of you are confused. Let me explain. Nourish gives you an energy multiplier that affects all incoming energy regeneration. So that means it affects Rally Point's energy per second regen. And of course, Nourish also buffs up energy orb pickup. So with my build, I get a 5.37 times energy multiplier, which is huge. Rally Point gives me 13.11 energy per second without Nourish. However, Nourish takes that to a whole 70 energy per second. And since you aggro enemies, they hit you to then trigger the viral burst from Nourish. So that solves his energy issue, but that doesn't solve his survivability and damage scaling. For survivability, it was simply fixed with the new augment, kill to get OVERGUARD. And this OVERGUARD that you get isn't an ability, so you don't lose it when you fall off the map or get nullified. That means even violence can't get rid of it. And yes, this augment does scale with strength, so the more strength you have, the more OVERGUARD you get per kill. And using this particular build, you're going to get 262 OVERGUARD per kill, which is pretty nice. And this build already has 130 kills per minute. Also, don't forget, just because you're gaining OVERGUARD, don't think you're not going to lose any of it, especially if enemies are going to attack you and you not doing anything about it. Now, for the damage scaling portion, I will be pairing up strength and external conditional base damage multipliers that affect abilities coded as weapons. Final Stand is coded as a weapon and is affected by Vigorous Swamp and Arcane Arachne. So these buffs affect Final Stand where it just boosts its base damage and it's multiplicative with ability strength. What I'm saying is, this build isn't for people who want to press one button and forget about it. It's a very active playstyle, but very rewarding. You have to keep an eye out on your buffs and weapon swap before casting your 4th ability. So let's take a look at the requirements for this build. For one, you're going to need Arcane Arachne, Wall Latch, and get 150% damage for 30 seconds. You don't have to Spider-Man for 1 hour on the wall, just quickly touch it, meaning jump, right-click on a wall, and boom, you have this buff active for 30 seconds. The only problem is that it's not refreshable, so you have to wait for it to run out. And the other arcane is Molt Augmented for that 60 60% strength when you get 250 kills. And when it comes to Archon Shards, I just have blue shards to give me energy maximum because I'm not modding for any energy on my Warframe. And for the focus school, I will be using Matter Eye. Matter Eye is only used for sling strength, so what you do is perform 2 void slings to give you 40% strength for 20 seconds. And power transfer, by simply performing a transference, will give you 50% casting speed. Alright, let me demonstrate the rotation for this build. Perform 2 void slings to get your sling strength buff. And with that buff active, you want to cast your Nourish and Rally Point. Find a wall to proc Arcane Arachne, and just before you hit enemies, just make sure your Sling Strength buff is still active, perform a quick weapon swap, and press your 4th ability. That's it. As long as your buffs are still ongoing, just weapon swap and cast your final stand until you have to refresh the buffs. Alright, with all that in mind, let's take a look at the build. In the aura, I have Holster Amp, which is pretty much Vigorous Swamp. And yes, they are both additive to each other. By having a quick glance at the build, I do have a lot of strength, with Power Drift, Blind Rage, Transient Fortitude, and Augur Secrets to grant me 337% modded strength, 60% for Molt Augmented, and 40% with Sling Strength. Duration at 156% with Primed Continuity and Constitution. Vigorous Swamp for the additional damage on my 4th ability, and finally the Augment Intrepid Stand for that juicy overguard when I get enemy kills. And that is the build. And my weapons are just there for utility. So, on your primary weapon, just make sure you have Amalgam Serration for the additional sprint speed. And for the melee, I prefer using the Praetus for that sprint speed on its evolution too. And for the secondary weapon, just have 2 Augur mods there. And that's pretty much it. You don't need a Decaying Dragon Key or anything else. Alright folks, this is the new and improved Styanax. He's finally actually useful. Alright folks, that has been it from this video. I do hope you've enjoyed and learned something from it. And if you did, please feel free to leave a like, share, and subscribe for more Warframe content, streams, and so much more. Do refer to the description. Thanks for watching, and as always, peace. Bye-bye now.